It has to be said that your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man does have the weirdest release schedule of any Disney Plus thing I've ever seen in my life.
2 episodes and then 3 episodes the next week.
And then 3 next week, and then 2 on the 19th. Like, what? I'm hoping at least those last 2 are kind of like a big finale. But this week we got 75 minutes, thereabouts, of Spider-Man.
A lot of content.
Pretty much movie length. I have semi-changed my tune from last week. I liked it a lot more than I did. What do you think?
I really enjoyed it. This week I was watching it like in between stuff at work.
You put less value on it.
I put less value on it, but I really enjoyed the characters more, what they were doing. Maybe because I wasn't looking at the animation on like a big screen. I was looking at it like on the phone, so it wasn't like too noticeable. But like that stuff kind of disappeared for a little bit, and for a bit I just focused on the story and the characters, and I'm like, this is way better than the first 2 episodes.
I think in general, these 3 were way better than the first 2 on pretty much every metric.
Yeah.
But I went into these ones saying I'm not going to focus on the animation. It still distracted me occasionally. I'd be like every now and then it would look too jittery or too gross. But there was a lot more good about it. But there still was one major problem I had with it.
The mouths do it more for me. Like
That's
now, because like at first I was like, I'm not gonna care about the animation, and then the 3rd episode starts, and Norman Osborn's like, so you're Spider-Man, huh? And his mouth's just like, and I'm like, God damn it! But I just stopped caring, and the other stuff won me over a bit more. That I cared a bit less about the animation.
So the only thing holding me back from liking the show a lot more, I think, is I don't want to say it's not Spider-Man's show, even though it kind of is, and. Because it's Lonnie Lincoln's show at the moment. Yeah. But that's mainly because Lonnie Lincoln has an arc in these 3 episodes. He has quite a good arc. It's nothing like groundbreaking, but I'm watching it, I'm like, this is nice. Whereas Spider-Man has objectives. Spider-Man basically has to do this thing this episode, this thing this episode, this thing this episode, while Lonnie actually gets an emotional arc and gets to feel things. They're
trying to set up him being able to juggle his new life with his old life, and he's kind of leaving like Nico behind a little bit in the end of episode 2 and then a little bit over these episodes. So it's a very thin actual character arc for the Peter Parker
I don't feel like he's learning anything, but no,
he's not going to learn from it.
And then Nico is the only casualty of it, but episode 3 saved that a little bit. 1 and 2, she's definitely way too nice about the whole thing. But it's also, I flip back and forth on it because I'm like, I don't want her to be too annoyed. We don't need people like bursting out and being like, you never have time for me anymore. And it's like, he's missed 3 things. It's like, you can miss stuff. Don't forget to subscribe to your friendly neighborhood Birkenbeard. So episode 3, he is talking to Norman Osborn about, I am Spider-Man. And he has to fight 2 people. With him talking to Norman Osborn, it's kind of just riffing on the Tony Stark stuff again. For the moment, he's basically a Tony Stark replacement. A nicer guy than Tony currently, which is interesting. But they're not delving into any new ground because it really is just, at the moment, instead of Tony Stark, it's Norman Osborn. And then at the end of episode 4, instead of Ned, you now have guy at the desk, dude at the desk, instead of guy in the chair. Which again, you're like, all right, you're just swapping one character for another again, which is kind of what they seem to be doing with the whole show, as far as like, it's an alternate universe. So instead of this character being a boy, this character is now a girl, or this character is now black. Or both, in the case of Carla Connors. It just lacks imagination there, and I don't know whether that's because they had so much planned for the freshman year spin-off, and then they've just kind of like translated it rather than starting from scratch.
They should have gone even wilder. Like with the stuff that they introduced to now tied into like the MCU timeline, kind of like now we kind of get like a where it is in the timeline.
I do enjoy this more as a full what if. Like this has done more for me than any of those what if things.
You didn't like what if Peter Quill was sent as a bad guy to Earth?
When he was a child and he blew shit up for a little bit. Yeah, all the what if scenarios suck. This is the first what if scenario that's actually good. And you could have removed the Doctor Strange fight at the start. I know they wanted spectacle and stuff, but what if it was Norman Osborn instead of Tony Stark? Like, that's already changed a fair few things. Like, Norman kept it a secret instead of using him for his own gain kind of deal. Because Norman at the moment seems like a good guy. So that's more interesting as a what if.
I think they should go like way kind of weirder with the timeline. This is happening during Civil War. Where they show like a little clip from like the airport fight.
Yes.
They should do like something a bit weird with it, you know, if they really want it to be what if-esque, whereas it's kind of more just a throwaway line where it's like, do I need a register for this? And Norman's like, let me handle that. And then you just never hear about it again.
Yeah. I kind of like that it is just so subtle. Like, it is a subtle change, whereas what ifs in the show were like, what if it was 1608? And it's just kind of like spectacle.
Yeah.
I do like that it's more a little bit smaller.
I think what's weird, or what I don't like about this Spider-Man, is he's not really learning any lessons so far. Spider-Man always learns a lesson.
Yeah.
He always cries within like the first like bit of the movie. He has to learn something.
Well, he's had no Uncle Ben.
And also everyone is so nice to him. And that's the difference between Norman and Tony. If Tony was watching him have these fights where cars are being blown up, Tony would have like reprimanded him for it because Tony expects like the world of him almost.
I just wanted to be like you. And I wanted you to be better.
But Norman's like, we gotta think how to beat this guy.
That especially annoyed me when Norman figured out how to beat the Wonder Twins, not Spider-Man. Everyone gave Tom Holland so much shit for like, oh, he's just little Iron Man Jr. This is just Osborn Jr.
Look at little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry?
He hasn't figured out or learned a lesson. He didn't figure out how to beat the Wonder Twins himself.
Norm gave him like the tip.
Yeah, Norman told him how to beat him and like hacked into his mask or whatever. So then we just have little Goblin Jr. Norman makes all these suits for him. Spider-Man doesn't figure out how to defeat the unicorn.
The guy just removes the helmet for.
Yeah, it's done for him, which I guess does come from the good sacrifice that he makes where he's willing to save a bad guy, even though the bad guy isn't willing to save their friend. But it is just, I do want Spider-Man to have to think more. Like,
they're not really showing that he's like this 10th level intellect like he's supposed to be.
they do that off screen. They're like,
Yeah.
you aced your math test. And he's like, woo.
And I know they're saying like, oh, Peter's in the science class and Lonnie wants to be with him so they can help. And he has the Oscorp internship. But when he's at Oscorp, he's like fumbling around and bumbling. And I know you can say he has Spider-Man things on the brain.
He's too Tom Holland coded in the clumsiness,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have Tom Holland's charm. Tom Holland, when he's bumbling around, he wouldn't like get captured in his own cage or something. He would screw one little thing up and be like, oh no. There was one line how he talks about he wants privacy mode.
I wish I had it in my room at home so I could keep May out when I have girls over.
That was kind of funny. And then they just kept dragging it on because then he's like, oh, I mean, like if I did in the future.
Well, like, eventually. If I were to ever have a girl over, other than Miko, who is a girl, but more like a bud, not someone I...
Okay, Peter.
Like, don't make the kid that socially awkward. It's just, it goes from like endearing to cringe real quick.
Yeah.
And they do that a few times. The writing does go from like, oh, this is pretty good. And then they'll just take a joke a little too far. So episode 3, Norman's really cool about it. And Spider-Man just has to go fight some Wonder Twins, and Norman Osborn helps him. Meanwhile, we get Lonnie Lincoln having...
The craziest story in the entire world.
Which makes it not a kid show anymore. Like, episode 1 and 2 felt really kiddie.
He's dealing with actual adult stuff that people have to deal with.
Which should be in kid shows, but they also say, like, crap and ass.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, yeah, like, Lonnie has friends in a gang. A kid show probably wouldn't be like... Gangs are pretty good sometimes.
I was like, wow, these people are like more of a family to him than anyone else that I've seen.
This gang's pretty sick.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to join a gang. So yeah, Lonnie goes through this crazy story arc where he finds out his brother's in a gang, goes to save his brother from the gang, exchanges his life for his brother's.
Yeah, which we've seen done before.
Yeah.
But it's good to see in this, and it's fitting, I guess, especially because they want to do the downfall of Lonnie Lincoln to becoming Tombstone. I kind of like that.
That has a ring to it.
Tombstone? Yeah, I can't lie. Kind of like it.
Say that again?
It's good because it shows his relationship with Pearl kind of goes through a little bit of a falter in that moment. Like, he's embarrassed and doesn't want to tell her everything. He's like, oh, this isn't how I wanted you to come over for the first time. And him not being able to pay for lunch right beforehand.
Yeah.
So it's like, this guy's actually going through some stuff. While Spider-Man's just like, woohoo!
Yeah.
Like,
$1,000, Mr. Osborn!
everything's coming up so good.
Literally.
They might tie that back in, but it is kind of funny hearing Norman Osborn in that episode talk about how he just wants to help people. You're a billionaire, my guy.
Yeah.
You could do something. I think they try to sweep it under the rug with Spider-Man saying, oh, I guess that would cost several $1 billion to fix up this city. As in, like, more than even you have, Mr. Osborn. But it's like, I mean, you could probably do more than booking out lavish things.
Or even just like unicorns causing a lot of property damage and Harry being like, it's fine, we'll scrounge up the change in my dad's couch or something.
Like, oh,
You
we
know?
own all of the insurance companies. We'll pay for it.
Yeah.
Like, in this world, maybe insurance companies are good. But that's also just the Tony Stark problem of, at least in our world, billionaires are usually not good guys. If you're trying to be like billionaire and good guy,
Hey, what about...
it's the Batman problem as well, which is what the newest movie tried to fix. How they're like, it's corruption, I swear. It's corruption's fault.
Bat credit card.
7 million.
Yeah, he joins the gang. He has to prove himself to the gang.
Well, they haze him first.
They
as well,
haze him by being like, get these burritos from the rival.
The Scorpions.
I'm like, oh, a scorpion tattoo. It didn't like put it together. That's probably
Oh,
the
that was
scorpion.
my first thing. But then there was a female with a scorpion tattoo. I'm like, Scorpion's a woman too, huh?
Makes sense.
But no, Scorpion's a man and he's crazy. And I'm like, okay, they're keeping some stuff.
But then Lonnie has to essentially choose between his career and his family, where they're like, no, you have to miss football practice to come to the gang fight.
Yeah.
And then he ends up saving Big Dom.
But that's where it went back to a kid's show for me, where it's a gang fight where they all just brought their fists. And then one guy pulls a knife. I'm like, whoa!
Big Dom's like, I was giving him the hooks, you know, giving them the 1-2s. And then this guy pulls out a knife. You know, he has like a CSGO karambit.
Yeah,
He's
he like flicks it around. I'm like, oh no, it's like a scorpion tail, I guess. And then while he's doing that, again, Spider-Man's goofily trying out outfits, which
montage.
It
I
is.
did enjoy that because it made me feel like the game where you're just like changing your outfit every mission, you know, just having some fun.
I liked it because we never really go into why Spider-Man wears the red and blue. And I like the idea that everyone like is scared of other designs. Like I like the little trial and error of like, oh, this one terrifies children.
No
This
capes.
one's just there's no capes. This one's kind of stupid. But I do like how when he's standing in the Thor outfit, the bad guy's like, oh
Yeah,
shit.
people are like, oh,
like
fuck.
it's actually intimidating, whereas the red and blue isn't intimidating. It's not Batman basically. And I'm like, that's a nice touch. But also Spider-Man didn't have to go so hard with like clawing the tree and
Yeah.
like revealing himself to the child.
And then hiding the balloon until like last second. He's like, beep.
Like that's on him halfway.
Norman brings up a good point where he's like, why do I have to fly? Why can't I web swing? And he goes, because he's like, that frees up your hands.
Yeah, Sam Raimi must have thought of that, and that's why he's like, no, organic web.
Well, Norman's thinking logically, one of his powers isn't use webbing with his hands.
Yeah.
If I take out that
That's
from the
tech.
equation, he can just punch people better.
Yeah,
You know?
his powers do not include web at all. So yeah, Sam Raimi was like, why would this kid suddenly be like, oh, I was bitten by a spider, I better swing from webs? Like that's kind of an insane thing to think of. But if you can shoot webs, that's part of your power. You use that power. Like, cool. I'm like, okay, that's clever as well. But also, it was just a goofy montage while there's serious things going off in the background. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing?
It's like, your brother's joining a gang. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, this is getting deep.
This kid running home so he doesn't get like
Lonnie's getting
rolled.
stabbed. And Peter's like, I hope I didn't scare that kid with my costume.
That's what's holding me back is Spider-Man's a big goofball in this.
Or he needs to learn a lesson.
Well, Spider-Man in Homecoming having to come up against the Vulture, and it's suddenly like, oh, like people really want to kill me. Like I'm in actual danger. This is a real thing I'm doing right now. I can't be like fucking around in the middle of a fight. Although fucking around in the middle of a fight during the Wonder Twins fight, his riffs are so much better. Like he's quipping way better in these 3 episodes than he was in
Yeah.
the first 2. And it's not even like, oh, he's more experienced now. Because it's been a day. Like he's not getting better at quipping over time. It's just whoever wrote this one was better.
I wish they showed his Spidey sense a little bit more.
They haven't shown it at all. He might not have it because this was based on Homecoming. Remember?
Homecoming doesn't really have
So
it.
maybe they never even thought of it.
But
I miss it.
Tom Holland shows that he has Spidey sense.
He gets his Peter tingle. They forgot about it. And then people were mad, so then they brought it back. But yeah, I think it should be in this. But you can't have Spider Sense and a guy in your ear telling you what to do.
True, but things like, oh, wait till you hear his boots like whir up, and he's
Yeah.
like, it goes off his hearing in the middle of a fight, going beep, so he can dodge. Whereas it should have been him figuring out that his body can almost move faster because
Are you telling me you would learn something?
no.
Exactly. You're exactly right. It is just they've taken something else away from him and replaced it with a dude at the desk, which I don't love because again, it spawns from Spidey being an absolute goofball and like walking into a room that he knows is not secure and being like, "Hey man, that worked great," pulling off Spider mask.
Yeah.
And then Harry's just like, "Gah."
I also would have liked him in somehow through the internship working on his own tech.
Show that he's smart.
Show that he's smart and then he can work on it. Even Tom Holland Spider-Man, we see that he makes like the web fluid. And I guess he made it in this one too. Because Norm's like, whoa, you made this stuff?
Oh, yeah,
Very
again,
cool.
off screen, though,
But
is the
then
only
they're
thing.
just like, I've had L&D whip this up overnight, 7 different suits. It's all just built into like, obviously the little web shooters instead of having
Yeah.
like tanks of stuff.
Which is again something the Mysterio movie tried to rectify. He uses Tony Stark's tech, but he's actually doing it himself. And he's like, oh, I'm designing my own, and like puts his own spin on it because of the Iron Man Jr. comments. Whereas this one didn't seemingly learn anything from that. Also, his friends are probably going to have superpowers pretty soon through like Miko Minori. Nico. I kept calling it Miko in my things. Because she's barely a character.
other than being the one that Pete forgets about. She doesn't have one. Well, he has a talk with Nico during the episode, or maybe in the last episode, about ditching her at the jock party.
I can't believe you ditched me. I had to talk to this guy. And that felt more impactful when it happened to Ned, because it's exactly the same scenario, because they're just copying at this point. But when it happened to Ned, it was, like, you could see his sadness.
You felt sorry because they actually are nerds and they're like out of place.
And Spider-Man rocked up and like saw it and couldn't go in because something else happened and he had to go after that.
Yeah.
But then you were able to like seamlessly show that he was actually upset. Whereas Nico doesn't seem too phased by it. Maybe because she's an alt girl and she's just a bit too cool for school.
Well, it's like you don't see that they're not popular.
Well, yeah. Bullying isn't allowed in 2025, dude.
But the fact that they get invited to the football team's party,
Yeah.
you know, they're not just nobodies. Also, I'm liking the intro changing to have him in the suit.
Well, it's basically they took Ned and they split Ned into Nico and Harry. And that means each of them is now half a character. And they're kind of doing some social commentary through Nico. The show isn't woke. They're just... I'm going to say the show isn't woke. It just lacks imagination, which is why their idea of making a character in a multiverse different is to gender swap them or race swap them or both. Whereas normally you'd do something more creative, because Nico does do a lot of like, oh, billionaires are bad. I can't believe you're working for Osborn. But everyone's kind of like, shut up. Like everyone kind of like shrugs her off. So the show isn't woke. Did you hear that the voice actor for Spider-Man said he didn't realize how woke the show was going to be before he signed on?
No. I agree. I think this show isn't woke as much as it's DEI, which I hate using these buzzwords because
is it even
we never
like, I don't know.
It's like, oh my god, there's a girl in a hijab in Oscorp, you know. I'm like I know people are going to gravitate towards that and be like, what do you mean?
They were just very conscious of it when they made it.
Yeah.
Whether that was intentional or whether it was like Harry's black now.
But it's like it's not like Nico was like eat the rich, you know, like she didn't even go that extreme. I'm like, here we go. She's going to go more extreme, but she didn't.
And then she's following Harry Osborn because he's hot, even though he's rich and she hates him. So it's like, I think they do some nice stuff there where they're not too far one direction or the other.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's good. But then it does just leave Harry as spoiled rich kid, but he's not like other spoiled rich kids. And then Nico being like too polite to Peter. I'm hoping that blows up. Maybe magic power wise, I don't know. We're halfway through the show and they're half characters, which is a bit of a bummer. I hope by the end of the show we do like them more. But there are apparently 3 seasons like locked in and confirmed. Like probably another 20 episodes. I am at least glad that this isn't going to be a little bit of crap and cancelled, because Marvel's Spider-Man, the show before this, started out like absolute dog shit. That show sucked. But once you get through the first season, it does improve a little bit. And like they end up doing some interesting stories like Spider Island that I talked about.
If this gets better from here, then it's going to be good. By like by the 3rd season, if it gets better every season, the 3rd season should slap.
Yeah, but I stand by what I said about episode 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, bit dog water there. But I think what they're going to do with this one, if they are planning out 3 seasons, we're going to get 2 members of the Sinister Six each season. And then the end of season 3 will be a fight with the Sinister Six, his team versus the Sinister Six.
They could also mix up the Sinister Six. Like, they could be Unicorn and Ock, because shock horror, I think everyone kind of guessed it.
I didn't guess it.
Oh, really? The 8 logo? You didn't think, what has 8
legs?
Yeah.
No, I did. I was thinking more Infinity logo for some reason.
That's fair.
I'm liking what they're doing with the designs. Like, I like that we got like that
perfect comic book.
That dorky looking Otto.
Which I don't think we've had since Spider-Man 2000.
I'm like, what kind of toy maker is this?
Oh, really?
I'm like, who's making these gadgets for people? And then I see... I think it's Mila Malkova or whatever. I see Zarya from Knock on the Thing, and then Doc Ock opens the door, and I'm like, oh! Like, it kind of made me pop off a little bit.
Well, that's good.
I'm like, that's pretty cool.
I had kind of the same reaction, as in, like, I knew he was coming, but I'm glad they didn't keep dragging it out.
Being Eastern European, I did not appreciate the accents or the fact that they made these people Russian. I was like, that's not inclusivity.
Unicorn is meant to be Russian.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Unicorn is European, but... he's normally a boy, but now he's a girl. Again, it just lacks creativity, but I'm not too mad at her because I love Zarya. I love me a big Russian woman. Here it is.
Hey.
Bum. Spider-Man gets his own little objective again. He has to do one thing in this episode, which is fight Unicorn.
Yep.
That's pretty much all he does.
Doesn't learn anything from this one.
But then the writing goes to dog shit again, because when Zarya rescues her friends from the prison, they go, you're like some kind of rhino. And she goes, no, I am more like unicorn.
I'm more like, how you say, grguburshkushki.
He's like,
the unicorn.
That has a good ring to it. Say that again.
I was like, say that again?
It's bad enough by itself, but then at the end of the episode, after Lonnie does the thing that we talked about, how he saves the day.
The way you buried Gargan, we should start calling you Gravedigger.
Nah, we should call you Tombstone.
And then he's like, boy, howdy, that sounds pretty good.
My own nickname in my gang? Oh, boy.
Gangs are pretty fucking cool. You get nicknames.
You get nicknames, and they look after you. Big Dom
and they
bought
buy
him
you
lunch.
burritos. Yeah.
That's
he couldn't
pretty
afford
good.
lunch, and he got a burrito.
Very true.
Damn.
You think his parents are giving him money?
The 1/10th look out for each other.
The 110th Street gang? Lonnie's with his gang, and one guy's like, we should call you the Gravedigger. And then Big Dom's like, no, we should call you Subscribe to Bergenbeard.
I fucking saw that coming so far away. Well, they've established how the Rogues Gallery is all going to get put together. It's all Otto's devices, which I think has been done before in a few things. Like, I think Spectacular Spider-Man also Otto's the one that puts together the Sinister Six to fight him.
Pete makes friends with Harry in this episode. But they don't really, they become more superficial friends.
Yeah.
Like, talking about like Captain America and like kind of just bonding over like they both love Cap and...
Yeah, which is pretty surface level. They just needed them to be friends. But Peter thinks he's a cool dude, so he invites him along with Nico to the movies. And then you do see that Nico maybe is starting to feel a bit sad that she's getting looked over.
She's like,
It's not like they've been friends for a long time. It's like they've only just become friends in episode 1 when she is very standoffish. We just have a lot of characters doing kind of the same thing. And then Lonnie's just like definitely the standout. There's no trajectory for Spider-Man except he's going to get to fight the next person, like the next guy he's going to fight. Whereas with Lonnie, you can actually see that he's going to have his downfall.
well, I wonder if this season's going to be Lonnie's getting 50 split, and then next season will be Nico going through that same kind of thing, but she's finding out about her own maybe powers or about her own thing along with Spider-Man. And then season 3, maybe we're going to get the downfall of Norm, and that'll go alongside it. Or...
Pearl is a ocean princess in the comics.
Oh.
So that could be a thing.
But that's just so boring.
I'm hoping we get more Norman downfall and how that interplays with Harry and Peter. But yeah, currently Peter's going kind of nowhere except into the next fight with whoever Doc Ock sends his way.
Yeah.
I'm keen for more episodes at least, and I like having 3 at a time. I would rather they were just longer.
My problem with this, though, is that although I'm enjoying it now, it hasn't made the list of I'd ever go back and watch this.
Correct, yeah.
Which is a real shame.
It's not doing anything crazy different.
Yeah, if it had something, if it had like a niche, I'd be like, oh, this would be worth a rewatch. But it's not doing anything special.
Maybe we can get some cool arcs or like cool comic book things. Instead of just 3 episodes at a time, I would be also okay with just more meat. Instead of having to give me 3 small stories, you could give me just a meatier actual episode.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't.
Hopefully it's ramping up to something. And like, I guess this end of this season is just going to be like a fight with Lonnie or trying to save Lonnie.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's just going to be, maybe this is going to be like a long story arc.
Long. It is convenient having those 3 seasons locked in, because it does mean they're not, they can think big. They can actually try to do something interesting.